Tashi Dele. We're looking forward to hearing about the 57 afflictions this morning. And good morning, Katrina. Thank you for your translation. Welcome to everyone online. We'll begin with some motivational prayers.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one thus gone for destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, nor the world's supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paid 7 strides and said, I'm supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies, formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner, the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field, endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame, a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble, a dream, a flash, a lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the full faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, 4 lands, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land, venerable holy gurus. In the space of your true body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, all the need of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Gururam Namandalakam Niyatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Ja, dik song gelna.
Tene ka sure. Te Geshe chimbo shawale song le ro. Mi tula tene ne tunge chu chele tu. Tundi chine nye ka mongba tu su ni ma lo she song patas. Ka sure. Ngaranzu tawa gyata joba chusong milinde khoadang esong tungele tuchigi khoadang esong tungele jasul pa tuchigi tuchimbo tandrawa esong gwa mi tula tenenes tunge chuchele te ta tundi tane tundi liya nene ro ane ne song da khoya tunge tadala pa jori chetu gure esong mi tula tenene tunge chuchele tus tinde tundi tabude shisu maubana tabare shinye jukawure sungora tundi chine nye kawes mongbas ta mongche mate se kogoche mate sungora mongba tusu nima lo se tusin yebe kaptile tusin tili tene pa andrea tabshi ma chiche ni kuche tene madirwa jitan tudab shingui viche ti sarchik ma to nyoye me ente kude dusa ni lo che de maro so ne tumbu che te ora ka tu le meta te le te ne rogo sam o te de che tumbu che te ora ma to ni ku na shi che chi sam de sam be che ma tu so go to a ti le na
So, as the great master Shantideva has said, using the boat of this human life, we can traverse this ocean of suffering. As this is something extremely difficult to find, you fool, this is not time for sleep. So here, in dependence upon this human life that we have right now, with all of the freedoms and leisures that it provides, we have the ability to traverse this ocean of samsara's suffering, the sufferings of the lower realms. If we use this properly, it's like we're in this kind of ocean of suffering, but we have in this life a boat, a vessel, a great boat that we can cross that kind of ocean. And so while we have this sort of opportunity, we shouldn't remain kind of stupidly or like in a stupor or in sleep, but rather recognizing that this kind of a life is something that we have found just once. This isn't something we get again and again. We should, while we have this opportunity, take advantage of it. So while we have this chance, it's not the time for sleep. It's not the time to remain sort of ignorant and sleep, but rather we should be alert, awake, using this kind of opportunity, not remaining in that kind of stupor, but being really alert and awake, taking advantage of this opportunity that we have in this human life.
oh ya ti de ka so re ten de tunge tadale tur che tunge tudan ra den jo ge melu to bon de se gora ane chen de che bu ton da ya chen de che bu ne ga chi me se ke na chi ton da che bu la go ko ne de na ma de re so gora te mai ba ke wa ten je de ma se ke wa ten do pen be ba ten do ko da tunge le te ne so tunge le te tab che le chang go de so ra ti de ka so ra chen de zam je te wa la cha wa mai ba ke wa ten je de ma shi to pu se ti de te to ba la te to be chu she go de te to chu she go de ti de da ne ko bo lo du jin je be o ma ren je chen wa da wi na du ngo do tang le tu chi ke tab chin je ma lo ba sung ga de te so le te ba chen ne te ba da sam ba kom ba chen ne ren bi sim je tam je ge ta tu tu be ta tu be ne ba yong ge ke ko se yo de kun de je kansa shi tu yo ra cha nyam du ya san je ko man to ba cha nyam du te che do ne umaren je chong ta bu le ta le te ba che te sam lo ta te ya ne ya do kom ba chi wi sam ne kun no se tam ne sam ba shos de
So, right now, we have this human life with all of the freedoms and endowments to be able to traverse this ocean of suffering, to get out of all of the sufferings of samsara and the lower realms, but to really remain in a kind of stupor, thinking about only the happiness of this life, rather than striving for something that is actual, stable, lasting happiness beyond just this life. We should not remain attached to the happiness of this life, but rather think about the kind of greater goals that we can accomplish on the basis of this life. And in order to do that, we need to know the methods by which we are able to use this life in a way that we can get rid of not just the suffering of this life, but of all future lives. And so it is on the basis of hearing instructions like this from the precious Garland of Nagarjuna about the 16 methods for accomplishing good rebirths in the future, as well as the methods for achieving definite happiness, that we are able to pursue such a goal. So here we should think that in order to not just benefit myself, but to benefit all sentient beings, I'm striving to become a being who has eliminated all faults, who has developed all good qualities. And in order to get to that place, I am listening to these instructions from the precious Garland, and not just listening to them, but going to contemplate them, going to meditate on them in order to be able to achieve such a state. So we should set such a proper motivation for listening to the teachings.
뭐야? 동아도 리웅아 바데임바. 인도 가서래. 전주 선배 줘봐. 시당 랍중 군기 허르 전주 선배 줘봐. 김바다 랍중 군기 라버차베. 랍치 땡기도 왔다는데. 인도 가서 거르잖아. 얘네 뉴도 산게지 고만 토반데베. 가서래. 요도 산제제 고마 토반데베 김바다 럽도 중에 전주 선바 강이 야스고라 아니 또 대단 들이야 럽고레스 도르덴바다 계셔로 니체다 당부들 도네들 되네 럽도 중화에 당부 니까서 럽라 럽구차세 네네 그도 소소타바 들제다 네네 그래 만두 tenden abla kim atir te solo ga tambo de sri karsung do sana te ta bi rab do chunga is ta tambo de tanda tamma telia kebo ge do ai chanju sa ba kebo de si kyang ya de chedan tim ba kyang ma du che chawa che na ma do ma de be ne kap che lep sona song ga ra milia chawa che ku be ne kap che ma do chedan tim ba shiwa da chawa me be to ne champada tsewe tone ya si de kyang tube kuka mena songora tene te shashab kagre songora ngaran zo de tensan me de bchena susu si gi wanja tube tandalya te shagmarwa motu la soba yang jalangirwa motu la ne ma buchena o me ma su go nge lung ba si chi chi ngu sam susu le kyap jo yung gu sam ya motu langir ma do motu che ngam se gi me se 내가 계시 적인 생각이 시그마로 또 전주 선발게 마음발에 소소 용기도 소소하게 용기를 찍이 와라 말한지 찍이 말로 교아치마치지 요르스도 예셰치 메셰치 가리나 오요르 사체 마도시 오늘 전에 소소 냥구를 삼사 찍이 말아 챈들에다 그러 미카시에 로천주 삼르다 당가 메시야 계고레 로천비qabla 강에 마요하체 땅부던데 레가티 시시고레 삼기도와 카셰데 삼마다 요셔레 마음바카리 나이삼 단다 삼르다 네 마음발 강에 요한테 시기도 하티나시라 최날까 남배처럼 가르치고르스네 깨왕하지요 그래시고라 류부디 제도요 마도 셈게 게데 그 누구 제제 류메도 할 때네 남시 중부다 국바다 진짜라면 차네로 되요라 근데 겨왕아마랑 진셰부터 진셰베터 당겨요래 알아도 부춘주갈 식으로 와체네로 와체로 마음발이 용주갑리 용에 지나 때와 동에 가리나 때 소소티들 쓰기와라 근데 영화지 베톤노 당야 밀레츠와 체네 심장마부터 데세네 게시장 바테다 저금에도 삼네 게실로 당겨와라 지소다 때 게실로 당네 다 전주 sembage네 rabdu chungune karakari chegures ti kosongara 어디잖아
So then here we have arrived at the fifth chapter, which teaches the trainings that are for all, both bodhisattvas who are householders and those who are monastics. So these are the kinds of things that should be trained in by both of those. If one wishes to quickly attain liberation, then one should take up ordination, it says. And even if one does not take up ordination, it's going to teach a brief kind of exposition of the points of bodhisattva deeds, what should be adopted and abandoned for householders as well as monastics, and then give an extensive explanation. So here, previously, we had seen that he advised the king, if you are unable to rule in accordance with the Dharma, in a way that advocates for non-harm, that has love and compassion for your subjects and others, then you should, in turn, give away that kingdom. You should give up that kind of rule and instead pursue monasticism. So here we can see that, especially these days, when people take up political power, they don't usually set aside non-harm, right? But rather instead engage in things like warfare with the purpose of, say, protecting their land, their people. So it becomes quite difficult. We don't even see really how it's possible to rule in a way that would not involve harm, that would not involve violence towards others and acting in ways that are contrary to the Dharma. So here, often we don't even in our own lives act in ways that really accord with the thought that we are going to take rebirth, right? Maybe we sort of are proceeding along like, well, maybe there is, maybe there's not, I don't really know. And we act in ways that are more short-sighted, right? Some of us maybe have a sense of, oh, well, I need to avoid doing this or engage in this in order to achieve happiness and avoid suffering in the rest of my life, in the future of my life. So when we're young, we maybe make certain decisions that we think will protect our happiness in the future and make us avoid suffering. But some don't even have that. We're sort of so short-sighted that we're only thinking about what's in front of us right now. So in Buddhism, though, it's not just about this life, right? But there are future lives. And so we have to recognize that we are going to cast off our body and our mind is going to continue on. Our mind will take up different kinds of situations, some in which we don't have the ability to really think and pursue the Dharma, others in which we do have that kind of alertness and intelligence to be able to pursue the Dharma. And so it's in the same way that we sort of think about, most of us, what will happen in our life later on as being our own happiness and suffering, right? We take that into consideration and we try to avoid suffering. We try to pursue our happiness. So therefore, we need to think about our future lives. What are we doing that will ensure our happiness and help to avoid, eliminate our future suffering? Not just this life, but future lives.
뭐야? 어디 좀 전에 쇼로가 담부터 가르치고도서나 근데 랍도 중앙 예에서 뭐라다 개부 랍도 중앙 시샤시셔요다 지다 고럽 중라 고대 쇼라 냠도 랍도 중앙 예에서 담부 랍라 그버차 수수 랍자 가리나 텔이야 랍도 중앙에 숨자 가르래 로와 두제 가르 고고래 가르 빵고래 가르 체고래 티티스고라 랍도 중앙에 담보 랍라 소소 랍제텔 쿠셰부터 챤데 대바다 챤데 냠솔라 고레 차고레 스고라 담보 랍 쿠차스 네 소소 타르바 되제타스 다 테바 차고사가 쇼데 가르사 소소 타르벤도 되도 망보여라 어떠서 소소 타르반 돌제타스 에네 망데 텐데 아블라 팀세 망도 테바 로 Tende $2 soba tezu sonja kari sonja na o de tenla amne tina shene sosu nyamle la langle la tare la temgu re songora pesu che gore songoda ya tijulamna.
So here, then the teaching in brief comes in this first verse, where it says, then having become a monastic. So here again, under the premise that the king decides to give up his kingly rule and become a monastic, he needs to know what it is that he should take up and what he should avoid. So this is going to be something that that Nagarjuna respectfully explains to him. So here it says, then, having become a monastic, you should first become serious about your training, focusing on the pratimoksha along with the vinaya, and also becoming learned in determining the meaning of the precepts. So here, one should then really with great respect, look at the various trainings, particularly in ethical conduct. That's important at the beginning, knowing from the various scriptures like the Sutra of Individual Liberation and other Vinaya scriptures, you should study those with a great deal of seriousness, pursue that kind of study, learning about them, and then determining the meaning with great focus. And therefore, you should come to know completely the points that are to be adopted and abandoned.
Oh yeah, that is matter. Oh, that in the rabbi chung sutim je labal ya tambu kushepchene ya butini sungure sungura. Tabache sade sutim je laba karakale shungla tagore soso taban dulce dansera, doan durtu se te tutagore sera. No, tene long dumbu shi se te tutagore se, doa dan chebada. Tade long tenji se te doa shi ngudwa, long tenji se shung damba sera. Ra, o tene long shi se te o te tutagore so ta. Do de dan, lu shi dan chebada. Tene sumla mando chebada, tanda dushana. Do de mubeten do etende tesolia tebache orese o tebache te tana baba te te do rabdu chonga sungje sitim ji labate ben do en do to kanga tene te te tana abde timbershane labche ne sobar shebar chaos o te ya tudish lam dik don jeba te bital do sar ya.
So, just to give a little brief part of the commentary here, he says that having given up the kingdom, that kind of rule, and taking up monastic vows, then first you should respectfully train or guard well your ethical conduct, the practices of ethical conduct. And to do that, one needs to first study well, hear the various scriptures from the three baskets, but in particular, those like the Sutra of Individual Liberation and the Vinaya scriptures, the four-part Agama and so forth, those that are related to the Vinaya trainings, those that are about ethical conduct and how to train in that. And then having looked at those scriptures and determined their meaning, really focus on that and come to know completely the points to be adopted.
Dua tenje, dua namje, shung tamba, ene long shi she, hoti, kiri. Ya imba she, tene kar to sina. Ta sholo ka niba tere da, niba kare do. Tene niba tenje she sa, tere sa sholo ka niba tere. Tene niba tenje she se, niba she na bambar sa, dua tezula teba she ne, 동화시네라 견도서 강가 송제 강가 셰바체네세 텐지 셰바체네세 아니 이베 신나 방바차 니바 영어 시도 상마 방고레 동아지오 시시네라 이바체 아니 거리도서 뭐주 접된 잡아남 배딩에 버딱 버체 단디가 송제 때라 나중 갑되지 송고도 와 기바 랍도 중하다 티니가 그 송제 때라 아니 ngabtu chiware, ti yabu tabche cheni shenpa chewagore songpare. Ngabchu ngabchu tendu chakwa nam ijira chichele. Tendu chakwa nam bede ngebar tabar chas. Bezu chene ngebar to chasan shepa chewagore, ngabtu tis. Ya tsawati robsulam na.
So here there are various Vinaya scriptures that are kind of the basis for knowing what is to be guarded in terms of ethical conduct. So having heard those Vinaya scriptures and understanding what it is to be practiced, it then moves into the second verse, which says, then you should eliminate those faults that are cited in the Vastuka, assiduously learn to recognize them, widely known to be 57 in number. So here, basically learning then the kinds of faults that are cited in these Vinaya scriptures. You should learn to sort of, as well as the basis for those faults, which are widely renowned to be 57, investigating well, make an effort to abandon those various faults.
다든다 방자 납중납된 시월에 뒤아부체체 심바 자고래 송구도 근데 뒤어데 방아제 장가자고도 다니발라니 껴 방바다 방자가 껴데 껴 방자 껴데 시여라 이게 내랑에 거래는 뒤셔도 다 담불라 방자 껴데 어디 거쳐라 방자 껴데 뭐가 셔라
X.
나보는 줄아
네.
방자 껴데라 방구라 연대들 랑구레서 다 방자들 가려서는 네 개버셔 봐도 돈돈이셔 다들 섭제 말라네들아 다 당무슨 초와서 당납중납전지 장가 저거다 된다 초와서 당부정아 콘돌라서 배정아 지도가 정아 정소 아니 취취네 시집에 그래 시집에 미치에 또 봐래 취주네 십주 시직지도와 십주 취주서 십주 시직제 대가는 미치에 또 봐서 지셔 아니 십주 신이라 다 정해지다 십주 신이 진념도 동다 내가 좀 앞도 다 그래도 십주 간을 주점 내가 주라 근데 대정의 요리 대가는 니 겹되니 십주 좀 앞도 돼도 방정 좀 앞도 마 방시 시여라 야 되질람나 그래
So then one should know well these 57 faults that are to be abandoned, as well as the kind of qualities that are to be taken up. And these will be explained extensively. And then there's kind of a summary of them. So here, first is then the extensive explanation that is explaining the first 15, anger and so forth. I believe here it's translated as wrath and so forth. And then next comes the next section, which is from hypocrisy to the 41st, not thinking of death. And then there is a final section that begins with proclaiming one's own qualities, etc. And those last 16. So that then comes to 57 of these faults. So here it will then begin by explaining these 14 together with wrath, beginning with wrath.
뭐야 그래서 갖고 걸려서 담보를 좀 좋아서 정하셔버더라 다 담보 좋아서 정하셔버더 시기도 다 담보라니서 좋아서 주시셔봐 담보 공도서 주시셔봐 그래서 뭐라 숨제 좋아서 정하지 담보에 시기도 아니 취주네 십주시지 취주라서 뭐 십주시지 직시 아니 치와 메도바 시 직시로 십주신이 저거라 다 십주신이 내가 니버랑게 연대 쪽바셔 봐 시티 먹어셔 다 담보라니 좋아서 십시시에 봐다 나게셔 봐 쥐앙에는 좋아서 십시시에 나게셔 쥐앙은 도와 담보들이야 정해졌는데 나 예수들 된데 시기도 뒤찍을 장가 저도 찍을 때래도 좋아서 주시체 대가는 나 예수 정하러 어디 정하듯이 시기는 싫어 좋아서 주시체 받아 나 예수 봐 된다 정하듯이 시기도 주시체 나 예수 찍을 이나 늘 가가 시체 나 세계 코라 된데 시기도 나 예매다 시 된다 장가 저도 찍는 거나 아니 정하체 당분에 좋아서 세자 정성기 출발 체질 때 아니 놀래 tembe 세자 그네 단 너나로 손으로 해서라 담보 대상만 담제대 도나로 소요래 드바도 봐 셰바나 시체데 장가 요래세 티샤 아니 가라 오만 남라 어디나시 레레레레 상말란 도나리 요바테 아니 드바 캡시마 요래스 땡큐 캡시 요래스 이송도 야 지지 람나 담보
So here, then, in the extensive explanation, it will explain these first 15, beginning with wrath and so forth. And so then when that gets to that explanation, it divides that into the 14, wrath and so forth, and then an explanation of pride. And there are 7 types of pride, but they are counted as one in the way that Gyaltsab is commenting on this. So although within that category, there are 7 kind of internal divisions, that is counted as one. And then those first 15 topics, beginning with wrath and so forth, include pride as the last one, the 15th, but that is explained as one. And then it will get into the other sorts of categories, beginning with hypocrisy and so forth, and then proclaiming one's own qualities. We don't need to go through all of the various divisions, but here then laying out the explanations as they are taught from the sutras, he is going to give an explanation of the shastras, of the way in which these are explained. And so one should know that what comes below is an explanation according to the way that these are taught within the sutras, beginning with wrath.
뭐야 당가 주제 장가 저다 초아 셈비 축바데 당도 콘도 티셔도 초아 콘도데 셈 축네 네 고한데 용거라 콘도 용거라 셈 가레네 다시 마르네 토르 셈 축네 네 콘도 사거래 셔라 초아 셈비 축바데 대다지 대군데 군진시 초아 군진시 콘도 중원에 콘도 중화데 양자고 삼루탄제 대야 권데시 권시랑 아주 지를 권데 지키용해서 담보 콘도사츠데네 군진 군게 마티체서 야네 양도 삼루탄제 디마당하체 군진데 쇼라 콘도제 바스 군진세 니메지 제베데 콘도서 양자 삼루탄에 그 군진지 요르시도 어디를 토와섬 게토바데 셔라 아니 대단치 대 콘도단 대 거네 아니 군진이 뭐래서 원래 때네 마와야상 군진데 아니 쳐봐세 somebody 쳐봐도 그냥 쳐봐야 되라 꺼봐야 되라 그냥 봐 꺼봐야 돼 쳐봐 되고 쳐봐 돼 소소 되고 하면 그냥 매력 그냥 쳐봐 돼 쳐보게 꺼게 와라 단 도와다 되주다 아니네 그 쳐봐 매가 쳤는데 근데 그냥 정소서 또 시작하셔 보라 시작하셔네 따로 거라 다 도와 매나 고치다 되고 치원에 소소 되고 되다 들으네 미게 왔다 대체서 리마송 삼 시작하셔네 따로 거라 되고를 따해 이거도 되고에 대해서 것도 시작고 시작하셔나 따로 거라 마냐 저 대나네 그 되고 들으리 짜네 네 시샤제네 마 슐마 템프레트 내시 빼셔도 야 샤바셰제 마디고레 삼베나코 샤데 양보세제네 마티메 메거리 차그도 어딘데 빼찬송도 딘디버시 차바세 콘도 토아 퀸지 책바시라 아니 차바시고라 차바 틱바 차바 되세 아니 책바 까베테라 책바 틱라 셴바 오세 식사해야 될 것, 이걸 쓰는 것을 군남 유럽시 따야 시와라. 어디 계시거래서. 야, 되질렀나?
So here now we're going to get into some counting. So beginning with the first of these 57, this comes in verse 403. It says, wrath is severe mental agitation. So wrath or anger, when we have that kind of anger or wrath, it is a disturbance of mind. Something isn't like how we want it or what we expect it to be. And therefore our mind becomes sort of agitated, and thereby we give rise to anger or wrath. wrath. And then second is rancor. Rancor comes from constantly having it. So when we feel like something has been done wrong to us or something makes us angry and we think about it again and again and again without letting go of that, we have this attitude of rancor where we're not letting go, we're sort of holding a grudge with respect to whatever it was that made us angry. And then we have concealment. So concealment is hiding one's negativity. Now here, we really need to, as is explained in the Vinaya, and as well as just for everyone else, that it is necessary to confess our negativities, to admit what we have done openly and say, I have done this, I have done that, and allow for the process of purification to take place. It's said that the one quality of negativities is that they can be purified. If we really put them out there and we don't just sort of like hold it within as a ball and let it kind of sink us, we have the ability to make that go away, to purify it and make it light through being open with that rather than concealing the kind of things that we have done wrong. And then hostility is the addiction to negativity. So when we are sort of hostile, we almost have an addiction of wanting to be negative, wanting to be harmful to others. So that's the fourth.
Yeah, that debate is Toa Teta Jesu Timbe, Tambu Kondriche, Teta Jesu Timbe, Toe, Samla to Matan, Yamja Samlatan, the Gadu Kunzini Sura, Yamati Yanjata. Toa Teta Jesu, there were Toe, Kin, Tamdu Zimba, Kandu Zimba, the La Kunzini Sura. Chaba Shangi, Chaba Sadi Shangi Nibalana, Kutabji, or Tende Teta Chonsana, the Chemese, Tandaba Kavichura, or it is. Tikbase, doa da tende kabli ne ko tikba tikba sha ko doa so chon se so yora ti so di zane nga la kyo te da te chon su se tonga kari na te sen kaga se ko sha ba se ko doa sha ba se ne ta do yora sha ba ma se ngwa le ma se ka bi sha na ko nya de ge de sha yor no o kon do se ba da ne ko le so shen ge ne ba le wa se me me ba se be tikba cha ba de 샤바데 니까라 치바네 티바 시네메도 치바세데 니마 콘도세베데 바 시네 셈팅네 마다제 삼살이 안자고 군지시 니마테 텐데데시도 어디실라네 다기네 치시라야
So, similar to that explanation, just looking at the commentary here, it says that connected with that kind of anger, like holding tight to the continuum of anger or wrath, that's the attitude of rancor, right? When we don't let go of the continuum of that anger. And then concealment is to not, part of it is we often point out the faults in others, but here we are concealing, trying to keep others from seeing whatever fault that we have done by kind of dissimulation, not allowing them to be seen. Now, as it's said in the Vinaya and elsewhere, we engage in the practice of like sojong, the bi-weekly purification process, wherein you lay out in the different kind of divisions of negativities, the things that you have done wrong in order that they might be purified. But again, when you hold on to those things, when you try to conceal or keep them not seen by others, this is really what becomes detrimental, holding on to those and trying to not let them be seen by others. And then here we have hostility as being a kind of addiction to a negativity, wherein this sort of attitude of wrath or anger remains deep within your mind such that you don't let it go. It's something that sort of bubbles up from the depths where you're holding it.
oh yeah mo ta de nga zu kon do te pe sab so che ko che de to ka zu chi ba chu de mi so ba she chi she ge do chi ba she chu de mi she ne so ba she ge do kin de ko chi ba dang wa dang ro ane chi de chu de mi so wa sha la cha wa ba she ro chi ba dang de long ju chen bu yong che chu de mi so ya de la da mi ke wa sang bu to ye che chi ba dang de de ka lo long ju yin ma bu bu che sai ku ne me la so ba ya bu to ya de le chi ba dang ge do o de chi ba dang na ni long ju de 용거래 대민사대 때 상부줄 미네 야거래서 네 라다미 서와범바 라다미 루틴 토베 시르셰도 dondu kene te tendo chimba tanga drebu te mi na pechu she yangja shingata bana shipa tamne ter ker doya yo mara mi da jenda ni so so long che shala chimba tanga ma banda chimba drebu yangja she kende kone kone pe yo ara sa chimba she chutim she tel soba de mena tingi yong mare sungdo soba de mena kontu tuwe mambu yongura so so ngone shala tsawa ma she 펜도 진이 제외이나야 미션다 주 콘도 중에 연구라 나오는 콘도 중에 연구를 정아 콘도 중에 연구라 어디도 가르치기 마선에 다 서버 공부를 해셔라 서버 마금나 짐바다 주름 예들 남을 두고 말해셔라 용야 용 말을 쓰고라 다든다 라 콘도 세븐에 짐바다로 지금 말아 아니 콘도 세븐에 아니 샬 사와시를 마도 사와방 말아 어디 인디고 짐바다 주름 서버 선부터 뺏게서부터 해서 이 콘도 니에볼이야 서버도 공부라 서버 마고나 콘도 안도 따네 침바 용 말에 내 가서 샬 처와 방바도 용 말에 딩이 람도 로야 고시 용 고고네 서버 공부래 송고도 나저 엄마 죽박값이 용 봐. 미도 수수시시스 커도 될 게 가르스나 콘도 단단에 동데 메다 땡기라 가시 함지르도 미 쳐버리게 다시고라 장신기 레디 멤버십고라 미도 수수시시스 담바 멤버스 강사 천대 기부 담바 미 천대 달다기요 마 남산 콘도 제제제 다래 접 강가 제셔라 미도 수수시 담바 멤버스 수단 최면시베 남주 초시시 콘도 세수나 아니 제 초과 가래 매초과 가래 로아 가래 메로아 가래 성당 말아 가래 저 메사 가르치고는 제셔라 자 수단 최면시베 남주 초래 소소 뭐에 내지 가래나 야가드 가래 두가드 가래 가르치고라 가르치는 되게 말한테 섬을 당겨 말해 가래 얘네 고치셔 너도 뭐 무시셔 그러 어디 인데 그 콘도 사디 근데 깨져 뭐 무시해줘 말해 가가자는 마도 되니 야 마음 뭐 패도라 좀 미도 수수지 담바 멤버티스 수단 최민시베 남주 초시지 그때 자가린 어때 자가게 자지 근데 가서래 소소 남주 최도 최민시베 남주 쇼라 티베 매가 차그래 초바가래 마초바가래 남주 요 말에 간주마주 간그 제셔요라 야 티질라나 미도 수지 담바 추다 추면 남주 소시지 메시바에 유도면 들거지 내가 겨들이 마오바나네 내손을 주사그러 내가 왜 겨들에 용건데 마오바나 내민 제부쳐야 돼 내손을 라기 그래서 시작도 야
So here, anger is something that we should be very careful with respect to. We should really try to practice patience. We should practice patience, right? The first of the three perfections, generosity, ethical conduct, and patience, are extremely important. As it's said that through generosity we have wealth, through ethical conduct, a good rebirth. So having generosity or engaging in generosity is what allows us to have what we need in a future life. By being generous, the ripening results of that are that we have enough in terms of food and clothing and shelter and so forth, so that we are not without those things in a future life. But we want to have that ripen on a good rebirth, right? In a human form, not like say as an animal. So in order that we have those results ripen in a good place, we need to have ethical conduct as a kind of foundation. We're not able to use those kinds of results of our past generosity if we don't have a human rebirth. But if we do have a human rebirth, we can continue to be generous with the things that we have, thereby ensuring that kind of continuity of having what we need in terms of material possessions. But if we are lacking in patience, we basically undermine all of that work doing generosity and ethical conduct. I mean, even if we try to be kind to others, we try to not harm harm them in any way. We are going to face those who get angry with us, who try to provoke our anger, who cause us harm. And so we need to be very careful that we are able to be patient with that. If we lack patience and we immediately lash out and create harm for others, we are undermining all of the kinds of virtues that we have accumulated through generosity and ethical conduct. And so patience is an extremely important antidote to our anger, to that which will destroy the results of our generosity and ethical conduct. As it's said in the Entry to the Middle Way by Chandrakirti, he describes the kind of results of anger, both in terms of the short term and the long term. Someone who becomes angry becomes very unpleasant in their appearance, right? Their face might turn red. There's someone that no one really will find attractive. When our face is like contorted by anger, we become very unpleasant to look at. It's someone that no one wants to be around. One isn't a sort of holy or noble being. You lose that kind of status if you were there when you have a reaction of anger. And more importantly, anger causes you to, it sort of steals away your ability to know what should and shouldn't be done. When we lose our head in anger, we don't anymore distinguish properly between what it is that's proper to do and improper to do. We're so in the throes of that anger that we just act however we feel like out of being driven by anger. So losing the ability to be level-headed and use our intelligence in order to determine what we should and shouldn't do is another consequence of that kind of anger. And so there are those temporary results, but also we lose in the future in terms of gaining a bad rebirth. Anger leads us into a lower rebirth. And so being patient, even when we think that, oh, well, I'm not harming anyone or I'm not doing anything that will hurt others, we are going to encounter those that get angry with us, those that provoke our anger. And so thereby we need to be really careful with respect to applying the antidote of patience.
되고 되게 개천벌에도 아마도 가서래 미도 말을 가서서 미도 수수지 담바 멤버한테 수다 숨이 좀 해주면 뭐지 세배 세신 땅에 연대 남체도 살아 세배 공나 땅도 콘로게 좀 좀다 남에게 대부 형한테 독초에 따다 연구를 쓴 거라 자고 세배 공도 가르쳐 벌써 내절에 지면량 배서 봐서라 콘도사 미중게 될 거세바 그 마산나 미티시 치기삼나 가서 콘도사기도 왔던 거라서 냠요로 내절에 지면량 배서 봤어 또저 강에를 정으로 라서나 단디도 유셔섬 동해 땅에 지서라 소설 강에를 정월에 대해 당도라는 유셔다게 말사 세바 공사라 초랑에 벌써 배서바서네 최다 저 삼루탄에 세바 공부치고도 저자 예체슈때 딕베나는 콘도나 신기 딕베 체슈처와 매성도 세바 나신기 개발력 전부 매성도 에라 콘도다비 딕베 매스 세바다비 개와 매스라 어디인데 대 sabsoche부자 대 용나 아니 시천다 시다 용거 말로 콘도다 신다 시다 용거 말에 면도 제단 되바이 객세 벌레 좋아 이미 대회 생네 시다 때도 다좀 서시다 면도 제단 소소 대바다 메도 마시 지체서나 그저 왕체보로 소소 대바다 티바 관계 체고 대대체로 지금 말아 소소 대바다 메도 마시서나 야 건서 면도 제단 대바이 케이스 소소 대바시 다 투에들 케이스에서나 건서거나 이메대와더니 이메대와 차가 서바메디와차 이메대와 차스나 이메대와도 건도세이잖아 콘도 똑게 칼라쳐도 그 이메대와도 서바죠 다그 텐데 서바죠 매우서라 이메대와자 때는 건도야서라 아니 당부 소소미기버서 아니 미미기버서 아니 저와치마다 이바로고 어때인데 뒤 삽서 제고서라 나라도 강가티 용금도와 카도 시도 콘도서도 서바 공개에 삼죠 어떻게 이 삼로 전에 되거래 되게 되게 매 삼바이나 아니 뇨로 가서 대체 삼고 말아 파셰데 가서 시가 시그러 소소살레스나 아니 남산 콘도사에 같이 시그러마도 다티 되게 먹는데 삼산 드마서 삼산 차이로 시그러도 어떻게 담바이나 아니 고 Nyoru nyoru de ko chuni de. Te kyare tinga de beti ya umare tin de maso sabena ko nyoru nyoru de ko chuni ra. Tinga jung musum le ra to soba komge na ngi mata mata ko ro chon chon ru ge bade. So sa ha ko to ra. Te sona o yende kanga te so so kumji chene. Yana yando kumji che yana yando kumji chene ya ya. Ke mama driye te yende ya ya driye te rangshi de do asam. Yoya ra de do asam sam lo kor chora. 소소래 냠요를 또또 지나 왕왕에 맞는데 다들 들으리 자다테 탱기도 티치 요한도 토그도 왔음 아니 저 강가 사야 예도 왔음 연대 강가 야르 야르 예도 왔음 아니 산제다 타르와다치 샴바니지 세트도 치케르치 예세레섬 섭소제네 섬섬을 코드거라 셴 tum기스를 정아주 셴게게 tum기스를 셴 냥게게 tum기스를 냐니 또스는 띠띠르지도 그 배도시오 말아 그 좋아했던 거라 터바세 ene sambaase soso samutangudava ene kombaase ene yana yando kumdisha na te yonhe shara razu semji yende to stimba wal mauda so ya wade tisilana
So, patience is really important. We need to kind of practice patience when whatever opportunity arises, right? We have to practice these different types of patience, like the patience of not thinking anything of harm. When others harm us, to not immediately react to that in kind, but to be able to just bear with that and recognize that this can happen, or being able to willingly take on suffering when we encounter difficult circumstances wherein we have to suffer, to be able to sort of bear with those without getting angry is the second type of patience. And then there's the patience in the face of the Dharma, when we are learning various elements of the Dharma, to be able to have patience, to be able to bear with that. So as it said, there is no negativity like anger, and there is no austerity like patience. And here, as Shantideva explains, it really is the case that we get angry at all kinds of things. Like when someone doesn't do something the way we want it or the way we like it, right? We get unhappy, and that kind of unhappiness is then food for our anger. Or if someone does something that is an obstacle, a hindrance to what we wanted, or they do something that's just not exactly in accordance with what we wanted, this is what creates that mental unhappiness that then acts as fuel for our anger. And once we are full blown into anger, it's very difficult to control that. And so when we get under the control of our anger, we make ourselves unhappy, right? We are unhappy, that mental unhappiness being the first sort of seed of what comes to be full blown anger. And then we make everyone around us unhappy. And then there is the ripening result in future lives. So if we see this as being something that is dangerous, right? We see the faults of anger, we see how destructive it is, then we can begin to really avoid getting angry. We can reduce it more and more. If we see the benefits of patience, that this is something I want to cultivate in my mind, this is the nature of our mind. If we really reflect upon the faults of something and see the benefits of, say, patience, we can change our mind. We can reduce that anger more and more. We can develop our good qualities more and more. That's the nature of mind. This is something that we can know from our own experience. If we see something as really being beneficial and we are inclined to apply it, to practice it, then we are going to be able to increase that. And so this is something that we can know from our experience. If we really like take a taste of the Dharma, we can recognize that all of our faults can be eliminated. We see that by looking at the faults of anger, we can reduce it more and more, and it can eventually be ultimately completely eliminated. And so too, when it comes to good qualities, we can develop those more and more and more. But if when we listen to the Dharma, we are sort of thinking like we're listening to a nice story, it doesn't really have anything to do with me and my mind, then there's no benefit that's going to come from that. But when we talk about hearing, listening to the Dharma, and then actually contemplating it and meditating on it, that's how we are able to really cultivate these kinds of messages, or to be able to reduce our faults and to develop all good qualities. And we see that that is something possible because of the nature of mind.
oya o tise was something kasura 연대도 강가 가라도 치트 아니 다 샤샤도 고 연대 직 말와 아니 까 쳐도 전화 그 게임도 삼사 되고도 가시 소소 공개와 말와 저거 연대 샘지 연대도 강가 참바니지 메타바 가리네 공매도 소소소 연애양도 공시하는 거 야게도 춘이래도 소소 고바에는 마음내 요요 말와 이렇게 샘지 연대도 야게 컨데스탄 거래서나 연애양도 공세 rinda rwa nyingji chenpo kye kone nyingji chungchung tu yane yangdo kum nyingji chungchung cheru na yarwa te yane yangdo kum tena ko chunyi ya je rwa de chunyi ri chera kanchi rikdung ngamba se de namri na lyungyo ba kanchi rikdung ngamba sabi lene pewa chense rikdung ba koran drabu ji samlu tang ji lende chebe suri cherwa o tina shi samlu tang de ko yawri chunyi ri chera kanchi rikdung ngamba sabi lene pewa chense tsawa la solo deda gombar jona kaala nese chamba da tsawa tongpa nyi midakpa kanga chanchubi semla soba nga zo ke kongi wa mara te kongi ene ko ya je dhuwa yuwa ra nga zo makum tanda ke je midu samgito samchili ya makum na yuwa marwa gom sona sembi de kanga ya je dhuwa de ko chunyi de chera kanchi rikdo nga ma sabu lene pewa tsawa la so lo deda gombar jona kaala nese 야제 마침 버체 소소 당분에 신내가 말해줘라. 야제 마침 버체 당분에 신내가 말해줘라. 가제 공부에 대상 비하제 누구여라. 오예 티치라나.
So here, if we hear the Dharma, we hear about various qualities and think like, oh yeah, that's a good quality, but then we set it aside. That's not going to do us any benefit, right? But if we hear about a quality, we hear the good qualities of love and compassion and so forth, and we actually meditate on it, as in we habituate our minds to that, then it is natural. It is the good nature of mind that those will increase within us. So we begin with like a little bit of compassion, and slowly by habituating our minds, by meditating meditating on that again and again, we will increase that, develop this. This is the nature of mind. It is such that if we do that kind of practice, as in make that effort to habituate our minds to things like love and compassion, they will by nature increase. So there is a verse from the Pramanavartika wherein Dharmakirti explains that it is on the basis of a cause of a similar type, right? Even if at the beginning we're sort of imitating something or just doing it in a way that feels sort of artificial, by habituating ourselves to that again and again, our mind follows after what it's habituated to. So if we develop a little bit of love and develop a little bit of love again and again and again, that will grow stronger and stronger and stronger. From those previous moments of a similar type, it will increase. And so this is the nature of mind, that if we put in that kind of effort, it won't be that we remain as before, but we will develop those kinds of good qualities. But this is really incumbent upon us to not listen and just think, oh yeah, that's a good quality, and set it aside, but really to develop it within our mind, even if it's a small little bit to start. By doing that, we are increasing those seeds of a similar type, and that will sort of develop and develop more and more. This is the nature of mind. They follow after a cause of a similar type.
요야. 어다 티치라나 만도 쳤다. 진소 추숨 때다 패모 치수도 오마 주고 값어. 김바 주된 세바선 부터다. 대화라시베 김바 남랑아스. 김바 쪽에 근데 김바데 가서래. 상생기 김바 시샤라 송도. 김바 땅에도 벤저치 누구지 김바 쪽에 랍선 소리 때문에 제가 그 저왕이 메로서 그러지네. 네. 그러니까 진소 추숨 때다 패모시 대화라시베 김바 남랑아스. 소남 런치 김바 땅에다 세바고야 내가 mambu치도 녀다 mam부인데 망차 콘도 요한양가 요라 대랍도 좋아하는 것이다 내 부르시대 되는 거 시라게 지대기 내가 mam부치 세바시다 매백께서라 님을로서잖아 뒤인데고 용어를 좋아라 콘도 또서 용어에 게 용어를 좋아라 신바다를 가서래 추dim 시한에 차와지에 용어를 좋아라 신다 추dim 서바 거면 어디에 진서 주좀 되다 배모치 대화시 백kim바 남랑아 수남 시제 소제 되다 예수다 수남제 소제 때에 산제기 꾸다 송다 토다 내 셰에 가서 원주지 주디 때에 요라 진바당할 때는 내 표심 소바 강가도 연구요라 지금 소화할 때 저반에 르데 개발체 톱네 최선 무슨 주제 빼져서 무게 줄에서 먼저 르디 두고도 야 수남 시제 소제 되다니 진바 주제 쇠바시 대송대 산재게 수군도 저기 교수 되게 숨디야 야겠다는 거도 나라서 소소리 야니 가르 미르다 가르 르라기네 르 야보다 아니 론저다 대저 강가 야보 용한테 되게 용거도 와 뒤에 고 진소 주좀 대답해 무시도 하시면 기쁘다 손남 시제 소자 대다니 산재 수기 다니 고교수 수군도 지 나라도 제는 저 야보 지도에 세계 내면에서 풍부함에 껴야 붙인 주에 줄레리도 어디서 되게 심어도 라도 정하게 산다도 좀 먹고 세게 좀 알아. 론주 비치보다 되고 싶다 론주 매주 지금에는 그저랑 봐도 최지 심어서 오시고도 소소냠내서 소소 때문에 셔야돼 또 오시고 알아. 최지 심어 용 거다. 심벌 망보여 알아. 어디서 라면 담아다 야. 어디 되래.
So here, again from the Entry to the Middle Way by Chandrakirti, he explains that the Buddha, the victor, praised the first three of the six perfections, generosity, ethics, and patience, in particular for householders. And so here, those are considered to be what accumulate the collection of merit, which in turn is the cause for the form body of a Buddha. So here, when it comes to generosity for householders, for those who are engaged with material things more, engaging in material generosity. There are various types of generosity, but that kind of generosity leads one to be able to, again, have material resources in the future. And so too, ethical conduct and patience are sort of praised for householders who are practicing. When we think about it, it's more necessary for those kinds of householders to practice things like patience, as in they have more opportunities for that as they go throughout the world. They're engaging in various work and interacting with others in society. Whereas monastics, if they are, say, living in a more isolated environment, the opportunities to practice particularly patience may be fewer as they are more isolated from those kinds of interactions in society. And so it is these, the merit that is accumulated through the practice of generosity, ethical conduct, and patience that accumulates the collection of merit that leads to the good qualities of a Buddha's form body. So having the kind of body of a Buddha with all of the various marks and signs, the speech of a Buddha, and so forth, these arise from accumulating the collection of merit, really generosity, ethical conduct, and patience. So even in general, the kind of good or bad body that we take in the future is dependent upon our practice of those various perfections. Now, it's not to say that these are not to be practiced by monastics, rather that these are considered to be very important, primary for those who are householders. Whereas, so say, for example, monastics are not engaged with material things as much. However, they can still engage in generosity, the generosity of Dharma being very important, in that whatever it is that they are practicing, explaining that and sharing that with others as in a way in which they practice generosity. And so these are important as the accumulation of merit that leads to the form body of a Buddha. And while they're important for both monastics and householders, it's particularly sort of praised as practices for householders.
Oh yeah, that is. 당연히 쇼로가 시버된다. 어야. 요네 신도 로데. 요주세셔라 요다 교 요아 주세셔. 요제셔. 요네 신도 로데 미션다 고고던 거라 수수치체도 맨도도 티미도도 텐데세 포종 고고던 거라 요 잡아도시라. 요주. 요네 신도 로데 파르고 로에 된다. 수수문에데 마덴 베셔셔. 그러 고고단 신달 균에 심주 자주 교세되고 심발 카두를 장부 템바 매버셔 짜르교로 뭐부채 거기에다 샤야다 쇼야다 치킨 등을 치가 겨울시 마무 연구라 어쩌주세요라 다들 차도들라 차도 현재 연대 농사 차도의 현재 연대다 된대리야 안에 소소 동아기 위하래 콜레티 매초 콜텐데도 소소 미기버서도 동해 연구하라 동아 심 샬 차도체 연대 샬 차도치게 내다 벤저고 샬 차도치게 내다 롱주 치카레 톨 차도치네 차도 마무요라 어떠도 가르치고 그랬으나 차도 현재 연대 동시 연대를 써봐 어때서리야 동아지기 와라 대배 가서래 개 전부를 시래도 안 가서 롭초 제게 있는다 가리는 롱바 있는다 가가 차도 배워라 로고 예에 대게 연대 있는다 지금 차도 세우라 글쎄 저리요 돼 차도 현재 연대 동시 현리하고 무슨 소바 중에도 소소 동에 동료라 연대 미리 아버지도 소소 동에 야대 소소 겨울와 이네 세번 믿고 시작해 되거라 오늘 전에 제수연한 책으로 심지어 탐제 대화다 대화 주된 동해도 동해 매배 대화다 매대화를 주지서도 야부 중도는 때다 매대화를 주지 삼구여라 야를 중서나 때 버저도 야 중서나 그때 매서서 그걸 텐데 야부 가르쳐 주어서 삼 자도시고 때 만들라 그래서 자서라 야부 제수이라는데 야부래도现代是要不就是那普通社会中那高工个了，高层面了。现在要不就是那到高工嘛，就那要不的什么土了，现在要不没那差多嘛，现在要不的多。切水也那就了，可要不多，搞来讲的要背着要不的多，俺也真的切成要不多噻。可背有点要不讲个多，要不想个多，俺也真的讲的要不多什么呢？切水也那就给我切要不多，所以来东北没有些，老庄钱给的钱呢。그세 로바 롭종 야부치나 내가 그배 롭종 야부도 와서 저런 들어가서 배 롭종 야부치도 야부도 와서 라면 깨면도 배 깨워라 근데 소소에 티네시 제톤의 야부도 와서 선배네 소소에 심슈페 퍼져들 야부초나 가와콤 가와 체메슨 때라 밀리 야가 초슨 때를 가와콤 시거래 타도 마치스 근데 펜율랍신 부용 거 알아 어떻게 질랍나
So then, turning to verse 404, we have dissimulation is deceptiveness, pretension, crookedness of mind, jealousy is irritation at others' good qualities, and miserliness, the fear of giving. So we might not get to that last line, but dissimulation is deceptiveness in that one is trying to deceive others, not show the actual reality, kind of be dishonest in some way. And pretension is this kind of a crookedness of mind where you're trying to sort of twist things or keep them, again, from being presented honestly. So then we have jealousy is irritation at others' good qualities. So here, jealousy is something, whether it is with respect to others' good qualities or their learning or their wealth, whatever it might be, feeling irritated at that, feeling unhappy at that, out of a kind of attachment to wanting to have good things for yourself. So really, we look around and jealousy is rife in our world. And when we are jealous, we feel a sort of like pain within our own mind, a kind of irritation, or it's unbearable to us. And really, we suffer because of our jealousy, right? We don't, it's not as though the one who has those qualities or those things that we are jealous of suffers, but we create suffering for ourselves because of our jealousy. And so really we should have the attitude as expressed in like the four immeasurables, that may others have happiness in the causes of happiness. We should rejoice for them. We should feel, may they have joy. May they not be separated from those things that create happiness for them. May they continue to have have whatever it is that is good. So really, rather than feeling jealousy, we should rejoice for them, whatever it is, whether it's wealth, or whether it's learning, whether it's other types of qualities that they have that are excellent. We should think, oh, that's so great. And if we really are trying to practice, we shouldn't feel any kind of pain at that. That's sort of like, oh, why don't I have this? But rather rejoicing in the good that they have, those excellent things. We should wish for them to keep those kinds of excellent qualities. And we can use it as a way of also inspiring ourselves. Oh, may I be like that? May I come to have that kind of learning? So maybe your friend has a lot of education or is a really good study. Rather than feeling jealous of that, we should rejoice for them and give rise to our own kind of mental strength and thinking, I'm going to pursue that as well. So here we should increase our positive qualities really through the practice of the four immeasurables, and not feeling jealous, but feeling happy, rejoicing for the good that others enjoy and wishing them to not be separated from that. That's really how we should approach that, however common jealousy might be in our world.
뭐야? 어디 미끼리 소소 이내다 정보 편주 이내다 초과 편주 이내다 저기다 개가 편주 이내다 강가 지수요다 너 현다대 야부 거래 야부 중이네 제수 일하제 그런 야부 제원하시 가져 야부 차네 야부도 삼til 빼때 아니 대체체네 거 야부요라 때문에 자도 전에 소소 미끼 버스 어디 된대서 다 된다 가르도스네 뭐지 말이야 시바된바 차도 현지 연대 동서 현대 현라 부송 소바 여거데 라라 동해 계고라 자 현라 부송 소바 여거데 가와 계고래 세래 동아 마치스 가와 어디가 콜이하고도 와서나 소소 계워서 선배집을 계산하러 차도 지도 소소 미집에서 아니 그 되고서 임버셔 세나 동에 직반이스 세나데 가르스나 엉에티 땅당 에디 뇨르 두그레섬 시리 어레셔라 치바당게 telko 소소 롱주 셴라 땅데 셴라 팽기레 셴라 팽나 마오 발레 소소 치베 데부 소소 요고데섬 다 담부 치바당데 데르셔라 삼고요라 치베 데부티 요라 셰요라 이네 장주 서버서 치바당데 데부들 삼부당게 요마라 데불이 이미치기요 마로 코란 페나 삼 페버바시기 스타마도 어디 제나갈 마오 발테 용구리 삼기요 마래 따당부 침바 당대 침베 데부티요 아라 마오 발 소소티 용구리서 셰고라 마도 침바 당대 산에 소소 나르티 마오 발테 용구리 삼티톨 침바 당나 페도 요르데 페 쇼르도 냐가 요라 이네테 콜 페나 삼나 페바 셰베 데부티 코 부숨 소보 용에 다 쳐사라 고게 로세게요 마라 어디 인도 가서래 세나 동에 지바 니에세 세나데 가르스나 라도 론주 셴라 땅에 들려 신나지기 어레서라 되는 애들 이것도 레산에 세나시체 세나시체도 소소 론제마도 셴라 론제마도 제마들 상마 샤고라 띵아 좀 무슨 도대라 상마 샤네 도야데 여니 주사들 가르스 체네게 요마 배요 마라 소소 땅요 마라 어디인데 세나 동양지 관이사 데레부들 거 이달에 깨알 소바 셰고라 소소 론제 치바마탄사 치마디 베스교보 소소 교보 사에 통에 그 밀케베나 디메베 거다 야 티실나 솔로가 시바트 사스
So here, when it comes to jealousy, we might be jealous of a particular individual or like another town or another group or another country. And so rather than having that kind of jealousy wherein you make yourself unhappy, right? You can gain a profit by being happy for others. Like we shouldn't suffer at the good, the excellent things that others have, but really we should feel joy for them and kind of share in that joy and use it as an inspiration. Oh, may I become like that, rather than have this kind of attitude that just inflicts suffering upon ourselves. And then in the fourth line of this fourth verse, we have miserliness is fear of giving. This attitude of like stinginess or miserliness is thinking that like, well, if I give this away, what will I have? What will be left for me? I'll have less. My possessions will be reduced. And so here, by teaching about the kind of benefits of generosity, one can learn that, well, by giving giving away, this is how I ensure that I have again in the future. Now, when bodhisattvas engage in generosity, they do so without any kind of thought toward that ripening result. They solely have the wish to benefit. They're not thinking, oh, well, what am I going to get from this in the future? But rather they give with the thought, may this be of benefit to the one receiving it. And so even we can't necessarily start with that kind of giving, but if we give in a way where we know that there will be things that come back to us, this can help to begin to train us in that. And eventually we can get to the kind of place wherein we're not hoping for some sort of reward or return. But when we have this attitude of miserliness, where we cling on to our own possessions, thinking like, well, if I give this away, I'm going to have less. What will I have left? We really sort of hoard our things and no one benefits from them, right? No one gets to enjoy it because we are so intent upon keeping it for ourselves. And this kind of stinginess leads to the ripening result of being born as a hungry ghost, or even if one is born within the human realm, born in a situation in which you are really lacking. So here, rather than being stingy and holding tightly to your own possessions, fearing that they will, that you will be reduced in some way, being giving is what leads us to having in the future.
왜 단지 metro 제가 말하는데 야 다들 솔로 강가버들 뭐자 메다 테메다 세 네 란다 셴라 메제 바오세 뭐자 메바사도 란 주센도 셴 어게 텐데 셴 지금 말해서네 미고알한테 메테라 네 뭐자 셰바스 텔 메바사데 텔 메바사데 셴 어게 텐데 셴 미상마 테그레 치조나를 야보통그 마데 삼사텐데 제 zemgugara tinde ke me se karlamna karchene chesam susum chawne ba cheshana ane bandi rawati sura ngocha me ba ngocha me do sura me to solia tell me do se tell me do mi sama yusa tinde sin kera me so telgir ba sura o me tinde chawange ba kiba mabusa gi sera ngocha yoba de te yoba do chote ngocha me ba de te me ba de do Osa meda treme ba randa shen la menze ba ra ju sen do che shen ju sen do che ne ene mike wala menze ba de la osa me ba treme ba ra ju sen do che shen ju sen do che ne shen gi te gre sam o sen zem ba de la te yo ba tang osa yo ba se che ene ka re chen ba de bar me che nga je de ro nga je de ne shen ya ku shap chig ma ro de bar me che ba shen la de bar me che ba 나도 차서야 돼. 나 예지 님부에서 그다 샬을 구십셔야 돼. 라고 담아쳐야 돼. 샬이야. 어떻게래서 구십셔나? 뒤고 나 예지 님부터 그러라 차서야 수가. 되도 가서. 모자메다 테메바 란다 샬라 메즈바 테데브셔. 캥반 되버 메세바 샬이야 구십메세바. 라 샬라 통조셔. 나체 인도도르셔. 나제 신이야 시대 시작이라 호리 용게르바 두버 메시바오스 이좀 트레베 레바오스 이거스 야 가반도서 메세바와 캥반 두버 메시바시라 나제더라 샬라 90씩 말에 샬라 통조시야야 좀더 줘 니즈 니즈 니가래 트레베 레바오사 너무 신기나 기분이래 캥반에 두바면서 니즈 트레베 람바 통해서 령하기 요 아래 오래 니즈스도 르당하게 남중하 건데 깨쳐 두샤셔 니지 건데 남중만 더셔 어떤 데들 쓰르세 니즈스 어디지라면 디서 야 어디지라야
So then turning now to verse 405, we have first, lack of integrity is to not be ashamed of yourself. In consideration of others is not being embarrassed with regard to others. So here, and these are variously translated, but having integrity and being considerate of others is really being careful with respect to non-virtues, in the first case for your own reasons, and in the second for the reasons of others. Like if for your own reasons reasons you don't engage in negative activities, that is having integrity, or sort of a sense of shame, one could say, in a positive sense. And when we have consideration for others, this is recognizing, oh, well, if I do this, it's going to be seen as bad by others. This will be something that kind of creates a disturbance within others or within society. Whereas the opposite of that is to not care, like to say, oh, I'm just going to say whatever, I'm just going to do whatever, because I don't have any consideration of what other people will think or what it will do to others. And so here, these two are often mentioned as important, and the opposite of those, to lack integrity, is to not have any shame for yourself, to just act however it is, not caring for your own reasons. And to be inconsiderate of others is not being embarrassed with regard to others, that you are just willing to act however. There's no sort of sense of being caution or restraining yourself with respect to negative actions, either out of your own reasons or thinking about others. And then haughtiness is the inability to respect others. So here, when we have this kind of attitude of haughtiness or a kind of arrogance, one is unable to bow to teachers and so forth. You don't have a kind of respect for others. So often it's said that engaging in prostrations, like putting our hands together and making a prostration to another being, acts as an antidote for this kind of haughtiness, this sort of looking down upon others, seeing them with contempt or seeing them with a lack of respect. And so that is then the third in this fifth verse. And finally, we have fury is a mental disturbance caused by anger. So here, fury is really when out of anger, the kind of expression of one's body and speech takes on that sort of angry tone due to being under the control of that. So due to the kind of mental disturbance of anger, it then it shows forth in the way that you act physically and verbally, as well as mentally, obviously.
뭐야, 어디나, 작과 작과, 마음에 봐시라. 근데 교환하면 매주로 어디래. 그 가서 작과 세대 가르치 그래서나, 가실 말랑아 어디. 작과 세대 longe 속에 택배라게 셈, 캠바를 생각했어야 되시구나, 작과. 네, 마음에 봐 세대 가르치 그래서나, 작발라 속에 원게 교환하면 매주로, 교환 매주, 방매 longe 직 sabso kyawa chiya da tindame, laga chiya da chine ko sabso ma chiya ko pangmi longchu da chi chala da chi kari na kanchu ma chu chiya sha na ne pangmi longchu da sikdo. Pa me ba sakpa la sopa wangi teda namla me chur chi sakpa da shebe sem miswa sem ki sabso chiya ko laga chiya mara pangme ba sikdo. Kari na ko 내가 가르치는 그런 로다를 지어라. 어디나 신치고라. 아까 주말 주체선에 되고 말아. 저거 밤에 봐. 교화 남라 매죠. 교화 좋아라 객식이지. 아, 뒤질라나.
So then the first half of verse 406 reads, arrogance is being conceited. Heedlessness is to not apply oneself to virtue. So here, arrogance is sort of, again, being kind of like puffed up with one's own possessions and so forth, have that kind of pride or arrogance towards that. And then heedlessness is to not apply oneself to virtue. So here, whatever we are doing, to sort of not have any kind of heedfulness or conscientiousness about it, out of a lack of conscientiousness, maybe out of our attachment and so forth, we don't apply ourselves to virtue. And so this is not guarding the mind. I mean, whatever sort of activity we are doing, there's a way in which that should be done. There's a sort of process to that, but to just disregard that, not have that kind of of awareness or conscientiousness. And here, particularly when it comes to virtuous activities, that one doesn't guard one's mind against the various contaminated phenomena and so forth. That is heedlessness.
뭐야? 당가 제시도 안 제대 당가 찍이 봐. 이나 코로나 세대 봐 셔셔로. 나제 넘버 2인데 되네 랍도 체대 셰에세. 레레레 셰셰 셰에세. 그 가르서 나제 넘버 2인데 랍도 셰셰에세. 나제네 나주 어쩌든지 찍도 당을 떠네. 나주 나두고 나데 나제세 찍 당기를 마도 나제 2인데 당기 마르스 당가 당도 세거라. 다 당보네 생각에 되게 나네 당보도 가르스나 결라 원벌롬 제바 매래 매시 냠다 냠 다들 반지 세고서 냠바 하바 냠 됐어 원벌 나게 시우라 결라 원벌 롬 제바 원벌 롬 바시체라 제가 제 된디 시요다다 다 가르도스네 담보 member mentions mara member yin samga cheche gara member la mentions member kyobo yin ga to de yin samse nyamda nyamse nyamba to zo nga te dan ja de yin sam te da na shin ba te na shin ma yo kon da shin ga ye samsa ta wo li gura ne nyambe la ba nyam ta so so le nyamba te le so so le pa jo te le ra la ba yo sam ne nga jara 당이 가게 셔봐 오세 어디만 가데신 그러시나 담봉은 발롬 셔봐세 멤버 다 메시 다 멤버 다 냠모 냠바다 스tambu드라 가르스네 tel라운 발롬 셔봐 멤버 메시 냠다 냠 셔테서라 가시고르스네 tel라운 발롬 셔봐 생각제대로 멤버 다 메시 멤버들 텔코 쪼여섬 멤버들 메시 냐바다 냐모세 근다르치나 가 구테 전나 심베데 코데 찍반다다 인삼 가제시야 더 마시고 되게 냐바다 네 멤버 다 학과 냐베 라레 학과들 양아 다다 인삼 베 당이 정하게 시차오세 멤버 매년방아 제도 됐던 잡아도 다 멤버들 나 교부에서 나게 건드려서 그가 교부에서 롭종을 지게인데 다가 건전나 나 교수에 섬나 벤조를 지나 건전나 나 교수에 섬나 나게 그래면도 아대 가게 건드려서라 다들 내자고라 멤버 다 가서 뭐발로 마시냐 뭐세 그래서 멤버 다 매년 방아 제도 시대를 조심해서 멤버 제베 다 매년 롱게 냠도 킹뱅 넘버잖아 나 저거 이나 섬지야 고랑 같이 거래 그가 조슈딘 세거라 다가 조슈들이 나 조슈 이나이 삼사리야 나 제용 거래 나 조슈 예섬 제대기요 말아 조슈 이나이 섬 nga jeyum go dati nga onya be samlo shuk chimbo yung do tos keng bar jang go do ne ka dos membe ta membe menya ba nga jedo chidar joshena memba tewe ta meya rongi nyam do sem keng ba na ba karina sem keng ba jang go do karina yesam ko jobo ina karioris ko sambiore 조이나 그 매삼사시 semkhengbashi koran ngai samsa shuk chimbo yongdo tisiwara ne member te ta me ronge nyamdo semkhengbe na bashi no ya wote silana tambude
So,
tambude
So then we get into the explanation of pride. And here, this is the 15th out of these 57. And although there are 7 internal divisions, they are counted as one. And so here he then says in the beginning of, the second half of verse 406, pride is of 7 kinds. I will now explain each of them. And so here then in the first verse 407 that deals with this is the kind of, it's a little bit difficult to translate, but let's just go with the kind of pride of self, wherein it says, concerning these, the first is called pride. It is where one thinks of oneself as even inferior to the inferior, equal to the equal, or greater than or equal to the inferior. So here, when it comes to this kind of pride, having a thought of like, even someone who is inferior, we think like, oh, they're poor, but I'm poorer. I'm sort of in the worst kind of a situation, or I'm worse off than them. Or like if it comes to kind of education or something like that, and we see ourselves as being inferior even to the inferior, like, oh, I know even less than them. This sort of attitude in which we take ourselves, there's definitely a strong sense of I, right? And then we sort of put ourselves, oh, I'm the worst off. And so here in the commentary, it explains that, again, having this sort of manifest kind of inflatedness, right, of just thinking that like, wherein you think that I'm inferior to the inferior, or it could be equal to the equal, or greater than or equal to the inferior. This is the kind of pride of self, one could say, that has those sorts of thoughts. Now, someone might think like, well, how is it that this is prideful to think that I'm the worst of the worst, or like there's sort of I'm inferior to the inferior. Well, again, it is due to there being that kind of like inflatedness or this exaggeration. We have a strong thought of I, and then to have that kind of aspect that is inflated, even when one is thinking like I'm inferior to the inferior, that is in a way a type of pride, based upon, again, a strong sort of thought of I and inflating or puffing up sort of that aspect, wherein you are exaggerating something, in this case thinking I'm inferior to the inferior or have less qualities than even those of lesser qualities. That in itself is a kind of pride.
뭐야. 단 이바들다 사고가 제세들이셔.
Mm.
이번에서 냈어. 최강 단일에 개발파봐라. 냥발로 바꿔이 버려. 소소를 하고 때다. 나 거다 다다 인삼게요. 다다려 막고 사가로 연대인데 빼줘야 거리네. 리네 숙제이네 거리네. 응. 최강 단일 개발다. 단일에 개발파고다. 냥발로 바꿔이 버려. 고당이 다다에서 그런을 하거든. 숙제이네 거리네. 된저이네 연대이네 거. And it's like being like yes, it is still like being like yes. Yeah, this is loves in touch.
So then the next is a presumptive pride. So here, if it is presumptive pride for one to presume that one is equal to someone who is better, and so here, this kind of presumptiveness is whether it is in terms of qualities or wealth or lineage or even form, whatever it might be, to think that one is equal to someone who is better, like thinking, oh, well, actually, I'm equal to that person. I'm sort of, again, whatever it might be based on, that is a kind of presumptive pride.
Oh yeah, that next somebody, I just somebody. Take on those in a kebar pagba, kebar pagbe, kebar do pagba, lamba kansa. Yeah, kebar do pagba, da, kebar do pagba, lamba ne, shindu. 개발도 개발도 파괴, 다 개발도 파괴 롬바 강에 받으니 신도 토에 토냐베 나게데 나게 레장 나게데 알레티르샤 나게 레장 나게시도 데카시도스나 캐도 박바 달에 캐바도 박발로바 소소를 학바 질래 나티 학바 여섬 애는가 제치거라 뭐 들려 학뱅가 제스 소소를 학바 질래야 나콜레 학바 여섬 그 연대르시 나를 가리나다로 간조이나다 숙제이나다 가리나 개발도 박바 개발도 박배 개발도 박바 개발도 박배 다 개발도 박바 롬바 신도 토에 토냐방 아젤레장 아제테 뭐래서 아젤레장 아제시레스텔 다들 만들지도 소볼이야 만들지 저 뒤가래 토바르지 계셔 나제 명시래도 담보 두개 가래 야 두개 지키면 쓰듯이 어디죠 토와베자 마케테서 제게 품이다 품이 다 중앙시는 심대에서 나타지 메리도 뒤가 품이서 토바로 양지게 중앙신도 이미 학벌 시외 투와인데서 다들 학벌에 장 학벌 섬데 뒤가 학벌 치와래서 이미 학벌 학벌하게 니도 ngaje teaching ko ngaje chimbu sidai betari dora ne te ngaje wa gile meda sa jenge so le ake le ma so de sere mi ka don chomba da shanje se tan da ne o te chila ni ha tamade ngaje le jang ake de
So then next, again, this pride, presumptive pride is to think that you are equal to someone who is better. So to think, oh, I'm like them, even though they are better than you, is that kind of presumptive pride. And then next, we turn to pride beyond pridefulness. And this begins in the first half, or the second half of verse 408, where it reads, if one presumes oneself to be even better than one's betters, this is pride beyond pridefulness, thinking oneself to be even loftier than the lofty. It is excessively bad, like developing sores on top of your boils. So in this case of pride beyond pridefulness, to think that whether it's based upon excuse me, qualities, wealth, lineage, form, whatever it might be, to think of yourself as being better even than those that are better than you, to think oneself loftier even than the lofty. This really is a kind of, again, as it's called, pride beyond pridefulness. It's an extreme sort of pride. And so the example that it's given is it's excessively bad, like developing sores on top of your boils. So if you have some kind of disease that's already creating like sores or boils on your skin, and then to develop sores on top of those, this is what it is like to have this kind of pride beyond pridefulness, wherein you are, someone is superior to you, but you think that you in turn are superior to them. This is the kind of excessively has excessive sort of defects, like having boil or sores on top of your boils.
뭐야 다 시바데르다 시바데 니왈렘 바 시차와스 나보 동바테다 사체년에 이제 풍부나보 다게 동바테다라 세라 에네 몽베 나냠 짐바카 몽베 와게 나 삼사 네 토에나 버신데 짐나 테네 나오냐 버셰스 나오냐 버가게 네 제바나 가스도 탐제기 신이 할레베 사체년에 풍부니 할레베 풍부나보 시고라 풍부나보 달라 풍부나보 다게 동바라 라마베 다게 동바로 치다 다게 동바라 몽베 나오냐바 가야바테네 나오냐베 나 제셰셰테 나오냐베 나 제셰테레도 what is lama
And then next is the kind of pride thinking I. So it says the five empty aggregates are called the appropriated. When one apprehends them as I, this is called the conceit, thinking I am. So here, when one takes these five appropriated aggregates, although they are empty, having, due to one's delusion, grasping at them as though there is an I, this is said, explained to be then the conceit or the pride, thinking I am.
뭐야? 다들 라오에 다 여번 sembatele 때 가서 시요 말아.
Mm.
뒤들로 가라. 다이네 분봉하고들이야. 라오에 다들 근데 매번 있나야. 그냥 나오냐 sem 캥배나 버시 거라. 나 섬서 sem 캥배나 버시. 어디서도 들어가 계시기도. 야, 어디서
Mm. So this is different, however, than the kind of grasping at an autonomous self within the five aggregates. So here, this is really sort of thinking that there is a kind of, I mean, we don't call that grasping at an autonomous self pride, but here, really this kind of feeling that there is an I, not in the sense of holding it as being sort of autonomously existent, but apprehending the aggregates and thinking I am, having that kind of conceit that is distinct from the sort of grasping at a self of persons here.
너가 제가 아버지다. 나버지 드라마 토바를 톱냐봐. 내 거기 너배가 제티스. 단 대부 전슈다 시다시 또바 개버지 마톱나테 톱송사가 자주세 마진다 자주세 계송사바. 라. 내 처럼 마톱나 처럼 톱송냐봐. 어떻게 선바이나. 무시 마톱나 톱송삼사다. 어떻게 선바이나 너배가 제시그레세. Dharma tobar tom nyam basen debu chongi debu chimo debu trasumbe debu tinde segara ya cholam tholam se tinde sane dira yonden kebar se kome yonden tindra so so to mena tanga je top sa so samna ngbe ga je dira debu kyeshula so we lam tombe debu dira la ke mena ya ke so nya ba na se Dharma tobar tom nyam ba kanye ngbe ga je te se kyeshula so we debu 마토바 데라 토소냐 바카니 바테네 뭐뱅아 제테세 야 어디실라나
So then the fifth type of pride comes in the first half of verse 4:11, wherein it says, to presume that one has attained a result that one has not attained is to have conceited pride. So if one were to think that you had, say, attained the state of a stream enterer, or thinking like, oh, I've obtained the state of a once returner or a non-returner, I've become an arhat, in which you have not actually attained such a result, that is then a kind of presumptive pride, or sort of here, sorry, that's presumptive pride is different. This is conceited pride. So to have that feeling of like, oh, I've obtained this kind of result, like I've obtained this level of the path, I've obtained the path of seeing, or whatever it might be. Here in the commentary, it says to have the kind of feeling of thinking, I have obtained, say, the result of a stream enterer, when one has not actually attained that result, that is then conceited pride.
어야 데멘트 데서 kinshū state robsilana kinshū sete nyende ye lamla shu ne nyende thonglam se tongba nyingu sumdu tambo to sona ni kinshū shu ba sigra nyende thonglam ba phagbe kansa tongba nyingu sumdu to ne ra ni tanda thongba se chora pangja de pam thongba se thonglam je kap je pangja de pam ma sa kap tele kinshū shu ba sigra 제 얘도 다 좀 받았으나네 말에 가서 통방 구조 좀 세워라 통람제 방자 좀 요라 대방선에 교수 되네시거라 파괴 남지 견데라 통마야 쇼바서데 교수 쇼바스 되네 된제부 통방 방배 방배도 토선에 교수 되네시라 아테나시 체론 쇼바 청원 되네 칠매원 쇼바 칠매원 되네 다좀 쇼바 다좀 되네시 tendency shora nyedola. Otina ne kyushu set shora. The pesar, Shadala, you de come, you de carina, Mushimatum, Tosabala, Soba, Yashora. Yeah.
So here, just as an aside to what is mentioned in the commentary, to think that one has attained, say, for example, the result of a stream enterer or the state of a stream enterer. So here, when we are talking about particularly hearers, there are various stages that they achieve. So at the first moment of the direct realization of emptiness on the path of seeing of a hearer or a Shravaka, one it attains the state of an approacher to a stream enterer, right? When one has not yet abandoned those things that are to be abandoned upon the path of seeing, you are sort of approaching that state of a stream enterer. Now, when one has abandoned the three abandonments that go along with that path of seeing, then of a Shravaka, then one attains abiding in the result of a stream enterer. And so too, one proceeds through the various stages of being an approacher to a once returner, abiding in the result of a once returner, an approacher to a non-returner, abiding in the result of a non-returner, all the way through approaching the state of an arhat and abiding in the result of an arhat. And so that's just an example, though, that is given of something that you might be claiming to have attained, even though you haven't actually attained such a state. It could be that you are claiming to have a clairvoyances when you don't actually have clairvoyances, or any kind of qualities that you don't actually possess. To make the claim that you have those then would be called this kind of conceited pride.
Oh, yeah, don't know, Jet to better. Kikarse dosana, Tile Chela Turbane, Keve Loge, Nageto, Sitira. No take a Debacasuna, Tibele Chevala, Necha Nyam to Turbane, Tibele Chevala, Necha Nyam to Turbane, Keve Loge, Nageto, Tososa. Tibele Chevala Tabasira. Let's say the Sambo membership in Nayako, Logue Naje. Tikwa, Chinchi Law, Kendeliatine, Yantawa, in Samya, Tene, Naje Sheteliatine, Logue Naje series. Tileche Bala Turbane, Kebe, Logue Naje, Tosa. Devana Kandu, Tikwa Chebal, Tikwa Chebale, Tikwa Chebale, near Chanyamdo, Turbane. Kebe Logwe Majo, Tipache in a Cotele, I think a Sigusam Geshe Yoro, Missere of Chinde, Kumbisa, Tipachi, or a thing a Missa to go, Chetusina, Logwe Majo, Seto. Tigbe, Leche, Balanga, Chanyamdo, Tubane, Kebe, Logwe Majeto, Toso, say. Kebasunga, Logwe Majeshe, Sungure, yeah, Tislamna.
So then next is the sixth type of pride, which is erroneous pride, coming in the second half of verse 4:11, where it says, "The wise know that boasting about one's negative deeds is erroneous pride." So when you have done something that is bad, but you don't see it as being faulty, and you think that it is somehow good, to sort of brag about that, to boast about that, would be erroneous pride. So to think that something that is actually negative is something that is a quality, that's something that's good. So to have, although you have done some sort of negative action, to praise yourself or sort of boast about it, saying like, oh, I did this, like, oh, I killed this person, I engaged in this negative action, and feel prideful about it, is something that those who are wise know this to be erroneous pride. They realize that such kind of taking pride in actions that really one should be ashamed of or are negative is something that is erroneous pride.
Tanga getting better. 아야 솔로가 중이 되래도 다그 매바 니도 시 당니 매바 강의데 매배가 제시샤데 대단도 등시하고 오사 다들 매배가 제시도 대가수도 다그 매바가 선부전대나 그거 맨도 삼데 다 소소소소 우르치 투버진데 용거도 어디데 다 소야 그거 매바니도 다그 매바니도 당연히 매바 가면 봐 소소소소 봐 뭐네 다 소소배 두자라 싶지 당하다 내 말에 섬서 가게 좀만 소삼서 심파 몽드에서도 어딜레시도 다그 매바니도 나 소야 소부치 때나 그거 그면도 왔음 니도 시 당연히 매바 가면 봐 강의 배가 제시 자때 대다 어디 될래가 제시 그랬어라 다그 매바니도 시 당연히 매바 강의 때 매배가 제시 자때 대다 도든 셔버 대다 매배도 등래 셔버스네 되거래 대다 도드디 셔버 인스네 되거래 세트들도 야 어떻게 지랍잖아
So that was the sixth kind of pride, and now we turn to the seventh, which is pride of inferiority. So here, deriding oneself, thinking I cannot manage, is the pride of inferiority. Such are the seven forms of pride in brief. So here, to have the kind of thought of like, my being alive, there's no purpose to this. What am I even doing? To sort of not feel any point in even, say, being alive, for example, to deride oneself in that way, to have a kind of contempt for yourself, thinking like, oh, I'm not even human, or I'm not even doing anything worthwhile. That kind of attitude of self contempt or deriding oneself is then the kind of pride of inferiority. And so here, then the last line, I mean, it could be explained that such is the seven forms of pride in brief, or really reading the word that's seven as being part of the in brief. You could say such in brief are the forms of pride, or mention the word seven.
저그 탱배 넘버 여기 있어라 당아 시내 가서도 가까이 오면도 삼사선도 가 삼사야 로 탱배 넘버 여기 있어라 어째서 땡가 제시 있어라 심 탱배 넘버 여기 와라 당아 베스가 가르쳤나 딱하게 오면도 당아 삼사선 여기 와라 수수수 샘딩 아디야 개 전부라시다 지 손에는 당아 가까이 오면도 삼 선몽도에서도 어떻게 공가 제르진다 나의 삼루트 숙체단이 연구하라 나의 삼루 숙심부 캠베나 버숙심 매네티 연구도 요마라 어떻게 가정가 제시기서 야 뒤질라면
So here again, pride has this kind of aspect of like arrogance or haughtiness, having a kind of like inflated sense of self. And so whether that is, based upon holding the I as important, thinking something like I can't manage, like I can't even do this, or having the kind of pride of pride where you, or sort of excessive pride where you see yourself as better than others. It is this sort of inflated sense of self based upon holding that I as important. It can take different forms, but this is the kind of attitude of pride.
이것이 다 나게 된데 셔서라 이 나게 당근아 두듯이 달로서 어떻게 것이 다 되절이야 수준에다 고대절 공부 동벌 제바데 가사에다 고대절 지금 나네 마오사 솔가 조성되려다 다들 대단도서 이봐 추슈세들다 당부도 추슈세 니에다 고대절 공부 동벌 제바데 소소리아 니에바다 고대로 지용해도 달이야 안에 소소 시험대 남주 담메다르 스텐체 제체라 포주 밑에 통해도 오 코페하고도 삼사스 통해도 달이야 남주다 메다 시험대 제체 그 대선에 추주라 남주 가리나 고티 땡고르마도 가라주 제털기도 미르지요 지체네 또서 직부로 제 잡을라마이나 야고 지인도 나래시 미쳐져 요런데 수수시라 남주 가리나 땡고르마도 다던다 고치 신다지 신다르다 신다지 용에 걸려 남주 메다르 시대야 신다지 남주 메다르 땡든데 세고 말아 남주 가리나 다갈레 시대고다 뭐 가셔한테 제고야 연구도 근데 텔리아니까 추추시거다 추추데 가르쳐 거를 출시도 소소 남주 제단실로 남주 된다더라 뒤쪽에 와라 최고 최고서 소치자가 와라 다들 망샤 다들 추추시 니다 고디지 소소 네바르지 용해다 잘라도 다 빼줘도 저 용해다 사야 통해도 저 용해다 아니 생게 구셔버려 지나 삼사 남주데 남주다 마다르 때서나 그놈을 알레도 하다 그놈데 들려네 추추시가래 추추 니다 고디치 원부 동버셔봐 원부 동버셔봐서 류지 원부터 저배 동네 니주 니바도 좀 해봐셔제 그 인도 가부야 부셔세 대야지시거라 원부 동버셔봐 대사 가사 니다 고디치 칭잠 만에 마워서 가사셔야 되라 진예바다 대치바로 꾸티데 소소치 벤조다치 땡아로치 용해 돈다를 삼겨라 아니 칭잠바네 마워 칭잠보 다차보트데 셰셔 근데나 데도 칭잠 마워 데고 데베나 데도 예바 추추 소네 추슈네 예바다 꾸티셔 원보 돈바르 제바데 그 대다게 등을 개버셔서도 저는 왕보 고슴 용보를 써 원담 좀 매다 저방에 받아 들으면 돈도 배야 우습소시 때시거라 왕보 고통 바시기도 진담 주다 매다로 셔셔 다샤보로 시때시거라 지 디시제 디사 예바 추추네세 추추바네 예바다 고티처 왕보 돈바르 제바데 대단히 개버를 셰신도 이게 리우 당부급수 쇼르가 쭈바드나 도와 뜻다게는 디날 게시게바도와 야구신의 시도 주달능아리 개버를 셰신도사 가사니 예바다 고티처 세장 안나마 나대 집어라 가사세데 예바다 고티든데 도야던다 아니 실 세점간에 마와서 생장보 또 다에게 제도서 대임배다 그라 다디메도 그라리아 직가서 표계를 표사를 수여서 따라도 좋아시샤셔고도 망사 뒤단데 랍도 좋아하다 뜻으려 거라 그라네 그 네멜로 소체나 김버도 가게 랍도 좋아치 전달을 제치 선님들 표기하라 어쨌든 그라한테는 표사 수여서 결론 랍치 경계 수여서 근데 고라치까지 다좀버려 까지 인도도 연대 전부다 좀보다 시라 인도도로 시여라 나지 결혼 깨봐서 보래 결혼 다좀 봤으나야 결혼 자신부터 인도 결혼 깨지시 쉬쉬시 깨봐서 보시다 어때 이까서라 근데 소아스 실질 가발에서 과도서 니베데 가사네 과도 되데 시신에다 곱대체 왕보 돈벌체바데 대단해 거 개발 시에도 가사네 니바다 곱대체 책임자네 마와오사 어때지람나 해드면서 그래서 개발 땅마데 따네 야야
No. So here then that finishes the prides, again counting those 7 types of pride as a single one. And now we turn to the next section, which begins with hypocrisy. And so here hypocrisy is to restrain the senses for the sake of goods and respect. And then there is flattery, is to utter primarily pleasant phrases for the sake of goods and respect. So here, if one is seeking out, like say, a good reputation or for the sake of some kind of material gain and so forth, to pretend to act really well, say when the donors are around, not acting as one usually would, but acting in such a way as to try to get something, to gain something, to be acting like, oh, but I'm so good, really. I have this kind of, so again, restraining one's senses, like acting as though you have a kind of ethical conduct or that you have a really good practice to sort of put on airs in front of others in order to be able to gain something. This is the kind of attitude of hypocrisy. So here you should, no matter who you're around, always act the same way, right? This is the literal kind of words here that are translated as hypocrisy. Sul is like the way of doing something, right? And the next word is che, which means to like fix that. So here to sort of fix your way of doing something in order to be able to get something from someone else, it's really dependent upon your motivation, right? I mean, we're trying to improve our conduct, and so maybe we use certain situations to try to improve that more. But to sort of put on airs, to act really well when you're in front of others, when there's something to gain, this is then the kind of attitude of hypocrisy. So again, saying hypocrisy is to restrain the senses for the sake of goods and respect, to act like you have a really good practice, or that you're very ethical, or that you're always sort of really humble and lowly and so forth in front of others, hoping to be able to get something from that, is an attitude of hypocrisy. And that was previously explained, I believe, in the first chapter. So these sorts of wrong livelihoods. I mean, this is something that is applicable to everybody, but particularly for those who are monastics, right? So including this next one where it says flattery is to utter primarily pleasant phrases for the sake of goods and respect. So when you are saying something nice to others for the sake of being able to get something. So again, like above, being hypocritical, like acting in a way that you wouldn't usually act in order to get something really good from your donors or something. This was explained in more detail earlier, along with these other wrong livelihoods. But to speak in a way where you're like looking at your and again, in the past, monastics would have been going and begging for alms from various different donors, and to be like, oh, who offered you that? Or like if you're speaking to others, sort of talking about like, oh, you know, it would be very meritorious for you to be able to have a chance to offer to an arhat or to someone with such great qualities, or to even be able to talk with an arhat, to sort of speak to them in a way that is flattering to them, or makes them feel important, or sort of like they are in a good position. This is then flattery. And again, this is dependent upon one's motivation. If you're trying to get something from somebody else out of that kind of way of speaking to them pleasantly for the hope of a kind of gain, material or otherwise, that is then flattery.
Oh, that's the matter. Yeah. Oh, yeah, what a session.
Yeah, so maybe we will stop here for today as we are at time, and then pick up from there.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Ginla. You
Oh,
gave
yeah.
us much to think about. And thank you, Katrina, for your beautiful translation today. We'll finish with some dedication prayers.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and the spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lobsang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Gururana Mandalakam Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born rise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Oya, tukche na, la katin che.
Oya
Che
le
ma
so.
jeo.
Oya le so.
Mm.
Yeah.